All right, so the file today is, what's it called? Transactions.xlsm. So what we're about today is working with built-in function. We'll spend most of our time working with string functions. We may take a peek at some other functions, but yeah, so basically just this idea of what a function is. So you remember, like, when you first learned about a function, it was probably in your pre-algebra class that you had in 9th grade, 8th or 9th, so I don't know, so maybe as early as 7th grade, where the idea is I've got some process that happens, I put something into it, and it puts something else out. And what makes that process a function? What's the key thing that makes that process a function? For a given input, how many outputs do you get? Yeah, a single output. That's what a function is. If I've got or a given set of inputs, whatever those inputs coming in, they will always produce the same output. That's what a function does. And so that's and you're familiar with functions just using in Excel. I mean, functions is what you live and breathe with in Excel. Well, it turns out functions are a key part of VBA as well. So here's just some data that we're going to use as a backdrop to be able to work with some functions. But let's just take a look at how we deal with functions in VBA. So Alt F11. I've given you a sub procedure here that just all this does is loops through this data and prints out the full name of these people. I don't know if they're customers or whatever they are, but prints out these full names. So I should be able to run this, and it should just scroll through that data. So we're going to be doing something that works across all of these. I didn't want to have to take the time to write the loop in class, so that's where we're starting. All right, so let's just kind of look at how we might be able to call a function in the immediate window. So there is a function in VBA called square root, SQRT. I think. Maybe that's a VBA, maybe that's an Excel function. Is that an Excel function? There's definitely one called RND. And that just produces a random number between 0 and 1. There's also one in Excel for that. What's it called? Do you know? Rand, R-A-N-D. You know, so it's not that it's exactly the same. The two sets of functions grew up in different worlds, but they're here. So basically, this is an expression. We talked about expressions briefly last time we were together, but an expression is just something that can be evaluated down to a single value. Functions get evaluated to a single value. Rand is a little bit odd because as functions go, because even with the same inputs, it will give you different outputs. Maybe not the best example to start with. So looks like there's some questions. Are we having trouble getting the file or anything? We're good? Oh, you're getting exactly the same sequence. That's right. It's not really random. In fact, nothing in computers is random. So in fact, the whole idea of random is that, yeah, in fact, if you do that same thing, you should get exactly the same sequence depending on what else you've done with Excel. And so it really is a deterministic function that produces a series of numbers that looks random. So it's possible, and so basically you can jump to kind of a different place in this series of numbers. That's called seeding the random number generator. Here's how you do that in case you're wondering. I'm not sure why you would want to do that, but anyway. So if you just say execute the word randomize, you know what that was? It jumps you to a different place on this long sequence of numbers that looks random. Well, how does it do that? It actually uses the number of milliseconds that have transpired since midnight on your computer to say jump to that location here. So if you say randomize and then pull other numbers, they won't be the same because you won't have given it the same number of milliseconds from the system clock when you said randomize. This isn't about random numbers today, but that's why they look the same. Okay. Other built-in functions. Seems like there must be a bunch. What's that? So SUMIF is going to be a function that's part of Excel. We're talking about functions that are part of VBA. Probably should have taken a minute to look over some of the mathematical functions. Concatenate, there's no function for concatenate. We just use the ampersand symbol to bring it together. VBA functions. Let's just see if we get some listed here. Function statements, VBA functions listed by category. There we go. So string functions. So there's some date functions. Oh yeah, of course, those are the date functions. So other functions that we have built in, one is date. And this returns the current date. One is now. Current date and the current time. You could ask just for the hour. There's a function called hour. You give it a time, it will tell you the hours off of that time. So it's on 24-hour clock, and so I guess 3 in the afternoon is hour number 15. Do the same thing with minutes. There's all kinds of functions built in. M-I-N-U-T-E, minute. What else we have here? Day, minute, month, now. There's some math. Absolute value. I thought there was a square root, SQR. Oh, it's just SQR. So we can take SQR of 622,521, and that will tell you 789. So it gives you the square root. We've got all kinds of functions for kind of doing stuff that you might think you need to do. Math, working with strings, which we'll spend most of our time with. There's some financial functions. I never knew these financial functions were built into VBA, but here they are. All right, here, you can just call them directly. Now, so there's lots of different functions that are built into the language. Now, what if you wanted to do something like sum, but like something that's like built into like SUMIF that's built into Excel? It turns out you have access to all of those as well. Watch this. Let me just say I want to do worksheet. There's an object called worksheet function. Worksheet function dot, and then here's all your beloved Excel functions. Well, not quite all of them. Here's random between, which just gives you a random number between, a random integer between upper and lower boundaries, so between 10, or between 20 and 30. That will give me a random number in that range. So you've got access to all the built-in ones, sort of. What's the one that just gives you a random number between 0 and 1 in Excel? So I'm looking for rand, and I'm go right from radians to rand between. Where's rand? Did I remember it wrong? Can I come back here and say equals rand? Yeah, there's rand. But why doesn't it show up here? And the very sad answer is that if there's a function that is exactly analogous built into VBA, you can't access the Excel function. Why? Because the one built into VBA is more efficient. And they say you're going to use, if you want a random number between 0 and 1, use the RND function that's part of VBA. If you want something that's in Excel that's not in VBA, we'll give you access to those. I think that's crazy. Why not just let us have access to all of them? We're not that concerned in how efficient it is anyway. So anyway, if you're going through this list and you're going, hey, where is that one? In fact, the fact that I saw a present value here makes me wonder if PV is here. Yeah, PV is here. That's interesting because it looks like VBA has one called PV, returns the present value of an investment. Is it really? I've never tried it. PV, sure enough. So it looks like that maybe it's not quite entirely true that they're there. Maybe this is kind of recently added to VBA since they said who's allowed to be used and the other one I don't know. Okay, any questions on built-in functions? Let's go ahead then and get some experience working specifically with the string functions. So first task with our data is I would like to go ahead and take this full name and split it out here into a first name and a last name. Now, it is true that you could write a formula to do this, or what else could you do here? Pretty easily. Text to columns. Yeah, so you can use text to columns over here on the data tab, text to columns, but I'm trying to get you introduced to kind of the VBA way of dealing with strings, and so we're going to go ahead and see that. So what I need to do to be able to split this, there's a couple ways that I can do it. I'm first going to need to know where that comma is. So let's look at that first. So let me come into my loop, and right after I do the debug.print, let me come in here and just put a block here that says split full name. So let me give myself a variable here called position. That's just an abbreviation for position. Don't get too excited about it. Dim POS as an integer. Now, my position is going to be, the function's called instring, INSTR. So this is a string function. This is one that I'll expect you to get familiar with. Instring looks for the occurrence of one string inside of another string. I think there's an analogous one in Excel called, is it called search? Find? I can't remember. I don't spend much time in Excel. VBA a lot, but Excel not so much. So, but this one says, the order of the arguments here is so strange to me. The first thing you put is, where do you want to start looking in the string, which you haven't told it what it is yet, but where do you want to start looking? I want us looking at the first character. So I could have this really long string and say, you know what, the first half of this string I don't care about. Start at the 1000th character and look after that. But we're going to say start at the very beginning. Now the string one is what you're looking at. And so in this case, I want to look at my transaction sheet, cell, or row number row, whatever row we're on, column number 2. So that's what I'm looking at. And then what am I looking for? I'm trying to find where that comma is. So what am I looking for? Yeah, I'm looking for the comma. I'm going to put that in as a string literal. So quote, comma, quote. And this next argument is, what kind of comparison do you want to do? If I say text compare, that will be a case-insensitive comparison. Do you know the difference between a lowercase comma and an uppercase comma? There's no difference. It's the same, you know. But if you had like letters that you were looking for, whether it's case-sensitive or not is important. So VB text compare would be not case-sensitive. VB binary compare would be case-sensitive. VB database compare, I have no idea. We could probably look it up and figure it out. I've never gotten the urge to use it. It might be useful. I don't know. But I'm going to leave this. In fact, this is optional. I can leave this one off. And so I will. And that will default to binary. But since I'm looking for a comma, there's no difference between uppercase and lowercase. So that'd be just fine. Let me just go ahead and put a breakpoint. Have we talked about breakpoints? We really haven't yet. So let's do this. Let me put a stop right here. Stop is a statement that says, run right up to this place and then pause right here. And just let me look at it. So I'll go ahead and run this. Let's get to where we can see. So we're looking here at, that should be Brandon. Yeah, or Brannon. Oh, Chilton. His first name is Chilton. His last name is Brandon. That's a great name. Okay, so let me just come to my immediate window and look at POS. So it found at 8. Is that right? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, that's the 8th character. So now I know where that is. So now, armed with that information, I should be able to put a value into first name. So that would be column 3. I'll set the value of column 3 equal to the leftmost. Now, I don't want 8 characters because the comma is the 8th character. So I'm going to look at whatever is in column 2. And I want only 7 characters. So in this case, that would be position -1. And so now I'm just going to go ahead and drag that yellow arrow up to that line and run it again. It'll stop again at the stop. And that should put, oh, wait a minute, that's the last name. So I don't want to put it in column 3. I want that to go into column 4. So I'll drag back that up, run it again, and that should give me the last name because my full name is last name first. Questions? Yes. Oh, yeah, the question is, will this be doing something special because I've declared this inside the loop? And the answer is, no, it's okay to declare it there, but I really didn't mean to put it inside the loop. It should just be outside the loop. Inside the loop apparently works okay. I haven't played with declaring variables inside loops too much. In other languages, that would limit the scope of the variable to only be available inside that loop. I don't think that'd be the case here. I think after the loop, I'd still have access to it. Question here. Question is, what is TXN? Oh, it's a good question. And the answer is, let me view my properties. View properties. So you'll notice that the name of the sheet is transactions, but remember each worksheet has 2 different names. It has a name that appears on the tab, and then it has a name that you refer to it through code. The one that's on the tab is actually the name property of the worksheet. The one that is in the or then this other one here is called the code name of the worksheet. So in fact, if I was to ask for the active sheet .code name, it would tell me the name that I can refer to it by code. You can set that by just changing the name property, selecting the worksheet here and plugging the name property in there. I used to actually take some exercise. We would do that occasionally in class, but for some reason, about 10% of the versions of Excel, that will not be active until you close Excel and open it again, or close the workbook and open it again. It's kind of bizarre. So, but if I've set it and you open the workbook, it seems like it always works. I'm not sure why that is. So we don't ever do that in class just because of that little kind of quirk, but you should be okay on your own. Yeah. Oh yeah, here's the question. What happened if I change this to TRXN? Is that going to update my code? And the answer is no. So TXN stays just the way it is. And I've just broken this code because it doesn't know it. It no longer knows what TXN is. In fact, if I try to run it, it'll say, sorry, that's no variable I know of. So let me go ahead and put that back just to TXN. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the first name. So now first name is a little different. So let's take a look at that one. I'm still going to work off this position. So, but instead of writing it to column number 4, I'm going to write it to column number 3. And instead of taking the left, what shall I do? Okay, I can do the right. Let's go down this road. I can do the right, again, here looking at the full name. But now I've got to tell it how many characters from the right I want to take. So how many do I want? So length minus position, good. So I'm going to go ahead and drop right into that second argument. I don't know, how do you feel about it, folks? It's getting like a complex line. Should I make another variable that says how many characters to take, or just put it right here? There's a function called len, L-E-N, and I can give it some argument, tells me how many characters there are. So the whole length of it minus my position. Now, the truth is, that's probably going to take more, maybe even 2 more than I need, but let's see what it does, and then I can adjust it. Because that position is number 8. So let's go ahead and look at it. So this whole thing is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16, and if I take 8 off of that, that's going to give me 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's going to give me that space that I don't want. Let's just go ahead and I'm going to run that line, and we'll see the space, and then we'll make an adjustment for it. So it's put the first name there, and if I go and look, there is a space there. So what do I want to do? I really just want 1 less character. So I'll just subtract 1 here. And that should do it without the space. Yeah, so now there's no space in the front. So you do have to, kind of pay attention, and there's a lot, sometimes there's +1, +2, -1 to actually get to what you're after. Yeah. Oh, interesting, yeah. So instead of doing that, instead of -1, we could just say, look, you just picked up a space. So look, let's just take this whole thing that it calculated, and let's trim it. So trim, now there's a trim function in Excel. This one's different. All trim does here is it takes off leading and trailing spaces. So the trim function built into Excel does something different. If you've got double spaces in the middle, it collapses it down to a single space. Is that what it does? Yeah. This doesn't touch anything in the middle of the string. It just says leading space, trailing spaces, just get rid of them. So even though I haven't subtracted the 1 off of this, when I run this, it should still produce that here without a space in it, and it does. So we can trim it. You asked about trim. There's one other one you said. So clean, so I don't know anything about clean in VBA, but maybe there is somewhere else. But and do I know all the functions in VBA? I do not know all the functions in VBA, right? There could be, I didn't even know there was a present value. I was surprised by the list. There's a present value, so. Okay, so that's one approach. I don't even like that approach. Let me show you a different one I like a little bit better. So I'm setting this, so instead of using right, I'm going to use mid. Now what does mid do? Mid looks at the middle of a string, starting at a character and taking a certain number of characters. So I'm going to say mid, looking at my full name. And where do I want to start? I want to start at position probably +2. The third argument is how many, whoops, I copied too much. The third argument is how many characters to bring. And so if I take just one character, then I think that should just give me the capital C if I've done the math right, and I might not have. Yeah, so there's the capital C. If I tell it to bring 2 characters, it should bring the first 2 characters. What is it, CH? Ooh. If I tell it to bring 1,000 characters, what's it going to do? What do you think, error? I don't think that's going to get an error. I think it's just going to say, well, you asked for 1,000, but there's only 8, so I'm going to give you 8. Incidentally, you can leave this one off. This one's optional. And if you don't supply it, then it just says, oh, you wanted to start here, and you'll just bring the rest of them back. And it'll go all the way, it'll bring everything back to the end. And so I like this one a little bit better than this approach just because it's so much shorter. So mid start at the position, and then it just takes the rest. Okay, oh, that looks great. I think that's a pretty good example. I'm going to comment out my stop, and I'm going to finish running, and that should just fill in all those first names. That looks beautiful. Questions? We okay so far? All right, let's take a look at this phone number. Here's what I'd like to do with this phone number is I would like this phone number to be formatted. I like the parentheses around the area code. Call me old-fashioned, but that's what I'd like to do. So let's take a little in-class exercise. I want to take, and it doesn't take anything besides what I've already shown you. So the same little functions we've done so far, we should be able to use that to convert this into, in parentheses, 502, and then the rest of the, so go ahead. Let's take, why don't we take 4 minutes and see how far we can get in 4 minutes. So what I want you to do is give me the different version of the phone number that has parentheses around the area code instead of a hyphen. And I will find a 4-minute timer. If you get it finished and you just want to show it off to me, call me over. If you have a question, call me over. You got 3 minutes and 30 seconds to go. All right, so let's take a look. I'm going to do a little here called a new phone. All right, so the first thing I'd like to do right here at this point, go ahead and put my stop back in place. Debug.print. I just want to print the leftmost 3 characters, right? I'm after that area code, so give me the leftmost 3 characters of that phone. So that phone is in column E. So maybe just to make my code a little simpler, outside the loop, let me dim phone as a string. Phone equals column, it's in column E, dot value. So I'm going to print the left of phone, the leftmost 3 characters. Why am I only getting 52? I asked for the leftmost 3 characters. What's going on? Yeah, there's a space on the beginning of the phone. Who put a space on the beginning of all these phone numbers? I don't know. Is that pretty common to have little things like that come in with data that you inherited from somebody? Yeah, that's really common. So what am I going to do here as I just kind of, as I just make this variable? What can I do to get rid of that space? Yeah, just trim it. So, trim. So now my variable phone should just have, Yeah, it's that space is gone, so I'm getting that first area code 520. Excellent. Okay, so now to put this into the next column over, I'm just going to say I want that value to equal, well, the parenthesis, by the way, what are those two characters called? Those are parentheses. What is this one called? It's called a parenthesis. It's like hypothesis is singular. The plural is hypotheses. The singular of parentheses is parenthesis. Isn't that funny? That's one of those things that almost no one knows. You'll sound snooty if you say that, you know, parenthesis. That's a parenthesis. Don't correct people, by the way. They don't want to be corrected about that. Okay, so I'm going to put the left parenthesis there, and then I'm going to concatenate on. Now that I know I've got my left three characters, let's go ahead and bring that in right here. With the left three of those, concatenate on another parenthesis, closing this time, and probably a space. And then, now if my data is good, and it is, I just need the rightmost 8 characters. So in fact, it's so close to this, I'll just copy that part right there. The rightmost 8 characters. I think that's going to do it. Except I put it in the wrong place. I put it in column E and it needs to go in column F. But it did a pretty good job of it. But now I'm in trouble because if I don't correct that, it'll be really wrong. So let me put this back the way it was. I like it. That looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and run it and see if it all comes in. Yeah, so converted that. Did a couple things here. Got rid of that space. And now, you know, format it the way I wanted to format it. All right. Questions there? Yes. Okay, so the question is it sometimes automatically trim? Because I brought in the first 4 characters and it only brought in 3. No, that doesn't sound normal. Maybe you're experiencing some kind of witchcraft. Let me take a quick look and we'll see. AC is integer. Okay, so that's, I see what you did. All right, so what this student did was kind of interesting. Okay, so she actually created a variable for the first character, and you brought the first 4 characters, but didn't bring the space, right? So let's just take a look at this. I'll work on the active cell to be able to see that. Oops, make sure I've got the space on this one. All right, so let us work on the active cell. Okay, so if I bring out the leftmost 3 characters, I'm only getting that because that space is there. So if I bring the leftmost 4 characters, space is still there. But if I do something that forces us to convert it to an integer, like convert to integer, that did not do what I thought it would do. +1. I'm not sure that space is actually there, so let's do this. Let me concatenate on something that I know that I can see the space in there. So concatenate a capital X in front of it. Okay, so the space isn't there, but if I do that without converting it to an integer, I think that space is going to be there, yeah. So I guess the debug window is like eating off that space here for this example. So here I am saying, take this X and concatenate it onto the leftmost 4 characters. We see that. But if I do something to cause this to be converted to a number, like convert it to an integer, or assign it to a variable that is an integer variable, then it looks at that and goes, you know, space 520 isn't really an integer, but it's pretty close. If I throw away the space, I can get there. And so it makes that conversion for you. So that's why it happened for you. Okay. Now, I want to take a little different approach to splitting this. We could do this kind of the same way. We could find and what we're going to do is we're going to split this address into its components: street address, city, state, and postal code. Guess I don't need my random number in there anymore. So now what is going to be a little bit more difficult or complex about trying to find the position of the comma in this case? Well, there's multiple commas, but remember, we can tell it where to start looking. But the trouble is, I'm not sure that I can find a column in here that I would always be sure to pick up the second comma, right? If I said start looking after the, the 10th character, would that do it? It doesn't know it, because here it's got to be after this one. There's got to be somewhere where the second comma appears before that. I don't know, some small address. So exactly, there's no fixed number that I can put, so I'd have to figure out where's the first comma, and now look for the second comma after where that one was, and now look for the third comma after, there's only 2 commas, so we have to do that. But there's a thing called split. So let's take a look at split. Split is a really great thing. Split allows me to take some kind of data, ASDF, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I can split it based on some delimiter. So in this case, I'll say the comma. In fact, let's do this. Let me first put a space in there. The default character for splitting is the space. This will actually now return a structure that has 2 strings. It actually returns a thing called an array. I haven't taught you arrays yet. We're gonna spend a whole 2 days understanding how arrays work and everything. But this will return an array. It's gonna return a set of strings depending on how many delimiters there are. So how many strings should this return? This should return 2. So here I can just ask for one of them. And that gives me 1. Why did it give me the second one? Because it's 0 based. Yeah, this is a little quirk here. It starts counting at 0. So by just putting parentheses after this, I can say which part of that I want. It doesn't really matter where the commas are. So, or in this case, if I want a comma, let me go ahead and put a comma in there. And then I've got to tell it, not the default character, I got to tell it the second argument here to be a comma, to say split on the comma. Then it does that. And if I have another comma in here, I should be able to ask for the number 2 position. And it has cut that up into a whole set of strings. I just have to tell it which one. Now, we'll learn more about arrays. There's all kinds of great things you can do. But using split and just knowing how to ask for one of them to come back is pretty slick. So let's go ahead and do the address now. Okay, so our address is column G. And maybe I'll just work directly in the cells on this one. So let me say H is going to take on a new value, and I want it to be everything just before that first comma. So column H is going to equal split of column G. I tell it that I'm splitting on the comma, and I'm taking the 0th item. GHI is the next one over, and let's just go ahead and take the number 1 item. J is the next one over, and we'll take the number 2 item. We'll do a little bit of adjustment with this, but this should get us the first part of this brought in. So this one looks great. What's the problem with the next one? Actually, the next 2. Yeah, there's a space on the front of it. What can I do? I could trim it, or I could say, no, you're not splitting on the Alt-Tab, escape. You're not splitting on a comma, you're splitting on comma space. Yeah, and that'll say, oh, it's the comma space is the delimiter, and so the next string will come right after that one. Now, it doesn't matter. This one doesn't matter because I split on the comma, it's everything before the comma. It doesn't matter what else I have after it. But these two, if I just put comma space in there, then it should view that as a delimiter, and that space will get eaten up by the splitting function, and so I won't have to actually put a trim in there. Now, what if the space was there sometimes and not there other times? Then trim is a great idea. But I know enough about this data because I built it. I know the space is always there. But trim might not be a bad idea as well. Questions? Okay, let's fiddle with the zip code now. The zip code is going to introduce a particular challenge. What are we going to do? Oh, so we're trying to split this postal code out. Now that one doesn't have a comma, so I'm going to go ahead and, this splits that state and zip code into one cell, and then from there, let's just go ahead and work on the zip code. So that's going to be the next column. So HIJK is going to be looking at, it's going to split looking at J, and we'll split on a space. I'll go ahead and put the space in here, even though that's the default. Oh, thank you. I'm looking at J, and I want to plug in the number 1 value because the 0 is going to be the state name. The number 1 should be the zip code. But I don't want my state to have the zip code with it. So after I've put the zip code off, let me go ahead and bring the 0th position right back over J. So this one will actually be overriding what I had in J. Do we see it? I'm saying look at K is going to be looking at J, split by the space, and take the number 1 position, which is the 2nd position. And then I'm going to say, let's make J equal to looking at J split and taking what's on the left of my split element. Oh, hey, that's really good. We have to deal with New York. I hadn't thought about that. So thank you. I should have pretended that yeah, we're headed down that road just so we can see the problem. Yeah. Good. Okay, so we can't just split. Oh, shoot. So we got New York, and that's going to think York is the zip code in this case. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to find where the last space is. Oh my gosh, how are we going to find the last space? Well, let's do this. So we already have position, and we've already used it up here. We're done with it up here, so we can just use that same variable again. So if I say position equals instring, INSTR, starting at 1, looking at my J value, which is where it has the city, the state, and the zip code, and looking for a space, that should show me where the first space is. Let me run to that point. Okay, so let's take a look at what position is. The sad trombone has alerted me to the problem with my typing. Let me silence my phone. Okay, but you're right. We got a problem here. So let me put in here New York instead of, let's put the one to space so we can see the problem. I'm just going to change this interim data to New York. Whoops, looks like I stopped my code. I stopped my code. I'm going to change it over here so it brings it in. Huntsville, New York. Maybe there is a Huntsville in New York, I don't know. All right, I'm going to run up to that point there. And the position is 4, right? It's found the 4th character, right? But I want to find that one. It turns out there's a function called instring reverse, which says don't start at the first character, start at the way far right. So you don't even take, this argument doesn't even go here. And now that should give me the position looking from the end of the string. Now, it doesn't tell me how many characters it is from the end. It tells me how many characters it is from the front. But it starts looking from the end to find that character that we're looking for. So now, yeah, so split's no good here, but I should be able to say that my zip code is going to equal the mid of J beginning at position plus 1. And let me comment this one out for now and run that, F5. And so that's given me a zip code here. And now I just have to use the left of this one using that same position. So we're going to overwrite J, something very similar to this one, but it's going to be left instead. And I think I want, in this case, position probably -1. I'll run that line, and it should right over the top of J with just New York. Now, do we have a space on the end of that? No. No space on the front, no space on the end. Looks great. Okay, questions? Then I will comment out this stop, and we'll run it through, and then we'll see another problem. Whoops. Comment out that one as well. What is the problem? Can you see it? Yeah. Yeah. Zip codes aren't numbers, right? They're not, well, they're numbers, but you could, if you're in Massachusetts, what's your zip code start with? Starts with a 0, right? If we look here, that's 02458. But when we put, did we write 02458 into column K? We did. And what did Excel do? It said, that's a number. I recognize that. You don't need a 0 on the front of it, and it records it numerically. But we gotta preserve that leading 0. What are we gonna do? What's that? So we could make it a string. How can we make it a string? Well, let's try this. I'm not entirely sure this will work. I think it will. I'm going to concatenate on the front of that a single quote. Let's see what that does. This looks a little bit strange. It's a single quote inside of 2 double quotes. And now I'm going to multiply it. I'm going to concatenate it on. Let's just see if that does it. Didn't do it. Why didn't it do it? Now I'm wondering if I can actually do this. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's column, thanks. It's not column J I'm interested in, it's column K that I should be doing that on. Thank you. Let's try that. Ah, good. So now let's put that leading 0 on there. Well, that's not what I wanted to do though. I wanted to leave that one wrong. Let's leave this one wrong. I have a new column for the fixed one. Okay, so we're going to run that the way it is, but now I want to put the full postal one in here. Now, we just saw that we could read that off of the address that was here and just preserve that 0. But quite often you get zip codes. In fact, if you ever import a comma-separated, a CSV file, a comma-separated file that has a zip code, this is exactly what happens. If the 0 is there in the CSV, but when it gets put into Excel, Excel throws off that first 0. So how are we going to go from this numeric version of the postal code into a postal code that has the proper number of zeros on the front? Yeah. Okay. So here's the comment. We could have a like an if statement that says if the length of the postal code is 4, put on 1 0. If the length is 3, put on 2 zeros. If the length is 2, put on 3 zeros. If the length is 1, is there a zip code that's just 1? There might be. Put on 4. I don't know. You're right. That would be clunky. It would work. Let's look at one that's slightly more elegant, not tremendously more elegant, but slightly. So there's zip. So let's go ahead and put here. This is the new zip. HIJK. That must be column L. So column L is going to equal, and we're going to look at column K for this one. So let me go ahead and make this just column K. So this is just putting column K on there. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I am going to concatenate in front of column K 4 zeros, just in case there is some zip code that's only one character. And then now I've got something that's got the zip code that it was and a bunch of zeros on the front. Now I got too many zeros. So all I want now is the rightmost 5 characters. So take that whole expression and say I want the rightmost 5 characters from it. And I will concatenate that single quote on the front to keep the zeros from leading zeros from falling off. Put in that single quote that says, hey, this is text. Don't erase those. So now that should plug back in that leading 0. That didn't do anything at all. Did I put a 1? Oh, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not sure where the 1 came from. Now we've got that leading 0 back where it belongs. And we're still limited just to the 5. Whew. Questions? All right, let's skip email 2 for a minute. And let's come over here. We've got some kind of car data over here. Suppose we've got a make and we've got a model. But what I'd like to have here is the WMI. What's the WMI? The WMI is the World Manufacturer Index. It's just the leftmost 3 characters of the VIN. So this would be WAU. WAU. And I've got some VLOOKUPs put in here that it will actually read that and it will tell you what country is manufactured in and who the manufacturer of the car is. That's data that's on these other tabs over here. And now that I think about it, when I was making this example this afternoon, I thought this would be kind of fun. And now it seems really boring. How do we get the year digit? This is just the 10th character. What's the 10th character here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's a 9. If we get a 9 to go in there, it'll tell us it's a 2009 car. If we have an A in there, it's a 2010 car. Or a Y, it's a year 2000 car. But that's just like mid and left. That's pretty boring. So the last part of our example then is something to deal with this email here. As we look at column M looks a little bit suspicious. Do you see anything that looks suspicious there? Ah, looks like there's something on the front. There's a little bit of a margin in here. What's going on? Let's take a look. I'll come right in here. There's not just 1 character in there. There's like 2. So great. Let's just trim. Let's go ahead and work on email now. So that's column N. And I'm just going to make that the trimmed version of column M. Let's see. I want to make N the trim version of M. So here's M. Here's N. I'm trimming it, so it should get rid of those. It'll get rid of any leading or trailing spaces. We'll go ahead and run that out. Did it do it? Oh my gosh, they're still there. There's some kind of like super spaces. They don't get trim. Trim has no effect on these spaces. What does that tell you? They probably aren't Spaces. I don't know what they are, but they're not spaces. I've got some other character there that's not a space. So let's just, let me stop right here. Or I guess, yeah, let me stop right here. And then let's take a look at this. What have we got going on here? I'm trimming this. It's not trimming. So let me just print the leftmost one character of this. It's not much to look at. There are some characters the VBA doesn't know how to, Excel doesn't know how to show them, VBA doesn't know how to show them, they don't belong in a cell. How are we going to get rid of it? Well, in this case, there's always 2 on the front, but you can't always rely on that. You can't just say, you know, start at the 3rd character with a mid statement. Let's have another way to look at this. This goes back to something we talked about on our day of when we talked about variables, the ASCII table. Uh-oh, that's not an ASCII table I'm familiar with. I don't like this one. This one's not pretty, but it's okay. Okay, right? Capital A is number 64 or 65 and so forth. Now, we go up to 127, but the truth is we go up to, it's actually up to 255 characters. Up to 127, 0 to 127, those are standard. But ones above this, it depends on the font that you're looking at it with and so forth. And so it's possible for us to ask what the number, don't show me the character. VBA is not, it doesn't know how to show the character. Excel doesn't know how to show that character. But I can ask for its number. So instead of taking the left of that, let's do this in reverse first. I want to look at character number 65. That gives me capital A. I can go the other way by asking for the ASCII value of capital A. That gives me 65. So these char and ask kind of go back and forth between these values on the ASCII table. So I should be able to come here and say, this is just one character off the left. Let me ask for it. The ASCII value of that is, it's character number 160. Where did character number 160 come from? I don't know, but it's in my data. Why did I choose character 160? Because when I import your names from the university system, it puts character number 160 in front of all your names. I don't know why they do that, or even how they do that, but here it is. So let's do this. There's another function here called replace. So I'm going to call replace. I'm looking at not just the left, but this whole thing. It says, look at this value, look for something, replace it with something. I'm going to look for character 160. I'm going to replace it with a capital X. I should be able to see, I've just done replace. It looks across that whole string. Just find every character, and the character can be multiple characters, right? It could be, it's any string that you're looking for. And it converts those into an X. I could replace that with a 0 length string, and that will just chop those off. Now, if it's always character 160, great. And this probably wouldn't be so bad because that's what these are. Character number 160. Where they come from, I don't know, but we're going to get rid of them. So let's go ahead and put that in because that will do the trick for us. But in the next 5 minutes, we'll do something that's a little more general. So instead of trimming it, we're going to put this replace that looks for character 160 and replaces it with none. And I'll run that whole thing through. And that should have gotten rid of that spacing at the front. You can see that it's gone now. But do we have enough time in 5 minutes to do this example? Maybe. Let's see how far we can get. It might be nice to say, you know what? I don't care if it's not one of the characters I'm familiar with. If it's not something between 32 and 127, right, all this stuff here before 32, these are all non-printable. You know, one of them is the backspace character, one's the bell character, one's the tab character. And anything above 128, I don't know what it is, but it's not in my data. You know, I could write a function, I could write my own function that will just trim that. That might be a good example for the next time we get together, because the next time we get together is like writing our own functions. So VBA's got a bunch of functions built in, but if there's something that we can't, we want to do that's not built in, we can write our own. So rather than try to bite that off today in the next 4 minutes, why don't we do that next time we get together? Questions? All right, thanks for coming. Class dismissed.